Hello! Today I'm gonna try to show you how to make a coffin handled Bowie. I'll explain everything and why I did it, and I'll walk you through the process of taking something from here to a finished knife. Now this is a style, this coffin handle, that was like really popular in the times of the Civil War and the Wild West and things like that. And the coffin handled knives, you'll see them quite a bit, but not, I mean, I wouldn't say there are a lot of modern manufacturers featuring knives like this, at least in the higher end range. The handle shape has kind of fallen out of style a little bit. A lot of examples of this knife exist where it's got kind of a double guard on it, and there are a few with a single guard, and then sometimes you'll see a coffin handled knife that's an unguarded with no guard on it at all. So what I'm trying to do is take a modern take on it and use some modern materials, and then apply a little bit of ergonomics to the coffin shape. Now I really can't do anything about the up and down of the handle, but I can make the side to side better. A lot of times when I've seen examples of these knives, it's got like a real thin, flat handle scale on it, and I think we can do something about that. I think we can do some 3D shaping this way that will make this ergonomically a little better than it is. I'm also using some more modern materials. This is 3/16 inch thick S35 VN steel. And this is a nickel silver guard, single slotted guard that I bought from Jant's Supply. I've made these guards before, and it's a pain in the butt, and I got no time. I won't be doing that unless I have to. So without further ado, I'll show you some details of the design and why I did things certain ways. So I made the blade length 6.5 inches long, and that would be with a 9/16 inch ricasso. I actually put the guard 1/8 of an inch this way of the handle to improve the overall ergonomics of things. It's 1.5 inches tall, and I have a 4.5 inch coffin handle on it. Key thing to get right, the hardest thing, is this little notch right here. That's where your guard will sit, and that I usually get it close, and then I finish it the rest of the way with hand files, like jeweler's files. But usually what I do is I use a hacksaw to cut, to kind of define the edges of it. And what you want when you're done is a really tight fit. Like, it's actually very difficult to get this guard off of there or move it. And that's kind of what you're going for. You don't want this to be sloppy. Now before we put a handle on this, what I'll be doing is soldering the guard in place, just as a little bit of extra security. I tried experimenting with angling the guard a little bit, like a few degrees forward, and I also tried a bit with angling the handle down a few degrees, and no matter what I did, I could not make something that looked appealing to me. So I ended up with a, straight knife with straight up and down guard, and that's actually fairly unusual for me, but that was the way that I could make it look right. These holes here are where I will use nickel silver Corby bolts, and then these are pins, decorative pins that are kind of traditional of the style. I'll be using epoxy and these Corby bolts. So the epoxy is more just to prevent moisture and things from getting in there, and the Corby bolts are a mechanical way to secure the handle material to the tang. Eventually I'm going to have to drill some more holes in here, and I'll start out in this area to kind of lighten things up and improve the balance. Right now it's a little blade heavy, but as soon as I start grinding the blade, the weight is going to switch towards the handle. And it's also, when I put handle scales on there, the center of gravity is going to go back that way. I like it when the balance stays about like that. And so I am going to have to drill some holes back here to kind of skeletonize and take a little bit of weight off the tang. For the grind, I'm planning to do a swedgeless plunge line about 12 degrees on top here. I like the way that looks, especially when you don't end up with a vertical plunge line at the back of the guard. It just makes it look cleaner, and I like that look. So I usually do that first, and then I do the primary bevel on the blade. I'm planning to do a flat grind, and I'm not sure how far up I want to bring it. It kind of depends on how it looks with the plungeless swedge. Usually when I do a plungeless swedge, I like to bring it up and leave a little bit of a grind line going this way, but we'll see. If I were to take the grind all the way up, I'd need about a 3.6 degree flat grind to have a full height flat. And I almost always put a convex edge on, just because it's a little bit beefier. You're less likely to get chips and things like that, and plus I know how to do them really well, and it's actually the easiest grind for me to accomplish. So let's go out to the shop and we'll start grinding. So this is the bubble jig. I showed how to use this and how to set it up in another video I did on how to make a Fairbairn Sykes agent dagger, and you can see more about that there. What I've done different though is you notice that the knife isn't quite in there straight, and the reason I do it that way is so that this will be straight when the handle is straight. So I want this edge to come straight across the belt if I keep this handle perpendicular to the belt. So I've set this up for a 12 degree grind, and I've got an 80 grit belt on here. We're going to go nice and slow. So if you go slower, you make smaller mistakes. So we'll get started here. I'll do 3 passes on one side and 3 passes on the other, and then make adjustments. So you can see I'm getting much more out here and less up here, and that's probably because I'm not holding it as flat as I need to. I'm probably holding it like that, so I need to flatten this out. I'll make another couple passes just to get that nice and even across there. That's better. I'm going to take a few more. And then what I'll do is I'll just take enough passes on the other side so that it matches this way. There, that's what I like to see. Now we'll flip the bubble to the other side, and we'll make enough passes on the other side so that the lines are at roughly the same level if you look at it like that. So we're working that plunge line down. It's pretty good on both sides. This side needs to come down just a little bit more at the tip. I don't like them to get too thin up here. According to Jerry Fisk, it does serve some purpose in that if you're slicing through something, having a little bit of a step off there actually makes your blade go through stuff thinner. But I don't consider this an edge, and I don't really want to sharpen that, so I don't like to get them too much thinner than this. So what I've done here is I've switched over to a 120 grit belt to get these 80 grit marks out of there. I'm going to take a few passes on this side and then really try to focus on the tip out here, so that when I look like this, those lines are even, and the one on this side of the blade is about 2 millimeters up from that side. So I'll take a few more passes here with the 120 grit belt and show you the results. So now I want to show you something. On this side, the swedge extends all the way back to here, and I'm happy with how far that goes back. I wanted to show you how to correct if the other side doesn't go back as far as you want it to, and I made it pretty obvious just to kind of show you. So eventually I don't need that handle thing anymore, and it actually interferes with free grinding. So what I do is I just put the bubble directly on the blade like this, slow down the belt, and then I know how far I want to go, and now it's just a matter of extending this plunge line back to there really slowly, being mindful of the angle here. So always make sure before you put the knife down on the belt that bubble is where you want it. And then I just kind of start walking it this way, slowly but surely. There, it's almost back to where I want it. I am going to I'm going to grind a little more in this area so that this is more of a straight line back to there. Like I did here, I made it more of a straight line. It does curve up a little bit at the end, but that's alright. It's coming. So I'll grind a little more, and when they're even, I'll show you the finished result. But again, I need to take off pretty heavily in this area to keep that nice and straight out towards the tip, and it curves too much. Okay, I've got the swedge done, pretty darn even, pretty nice. And now I need to do the primary grind on the knife. And I like to start with a 12 degree and then get it thinner as time goes by. One thing I will say is that usually I like to have the plunge line angling forward a little bit, and so if you're going to do that and still have this tool parallel, you need to adjust it a little bit. But on this knife, I'm not going to do my forward slanting plunge line, just because, you know, the guard is straight up and down and the handle is pretty straight, so I think a straight line here is going to be the way to do it. So we'll get started on that as well. So there's what it is after 3 passes. I'm not particularly worried about the plunge line yet, because it won't be until this grind extends down to here that we even start making a plunge line. So I'll keep working. I want to get this to about dime thickness and relatively even on both sides. So there it is with 12 degrees on both sides. I left it about a dime thickness. I tend to leave it a little bit thicker at the tip because it's kind of easy to burn that. Now the next step is I'll go down to 10 degrees, and by the time we're done with 10 degrees we'll have started establishing a plunge line, so you need to be really careful on this step. I'm going to switch from an 80 grit belt to a 120 grit belt. So there it is at 10. The next one I do will be about 7.5 degrees, and I probably won't go much further because I think I only want to bring the grind up to about that height so that we still have this nice swedge grind on top visible. The plunge is nice and even, and it's ending up exactly where I want it, and the grinds are darn near perfect, so I'm going to take it up to 5 and see how that looks. So here it is with a 5 degree flat grind. I like it. I like that these lines will meet up out here. Something else I have to do before moving on to the next step is, you see how the swedge gets cut off right there? I'm going to go back and just very carefully under very low speed reestablish this swedge going out to the tip all the way, and then we'll move on. Remember I told you that the balance point would shift back towards the handle once I took all of that steel off, and it has. At first it was about right here, and now it's back further. It's really kind of right at the guard, right about there is where it is. So I will have to drill a few holes back here to lighten up the handle somewhat. But before I do that, I want to take and shape this guard a little bit better
have it kind of curve out like that, because that'll also change the balance if the guard isn't as heavy. Okay, so that's how I want the guard to be, basically. And to start moving the center of gravity, or center of balance back this way, I will start drilling holes back in this area. I'll start with 2. The reason you drill them back here first is that'll have the biggest effect, you know, Archimedes' principle and all that. So even with 3 holes, it's still very much handle heavy, and I expect that. So I'm just going to drill a few more, and as I'm drilling, we'll check the balance. Also keep in mind that there's going to be scales on here too, so we really needs to be lightened up quite a bit here. We've improved the balance quite a bit. I did have to drill a lot of holes. I knew I was going to have to, but I kind of wanted to show the principle. The edges have all been chamfered to get rid of any burring, and you know, take just a little bit, tiny bit more metal off, but that's just a habit of mine to chamfer the edges and get rid of the burrs. So now, prior to putting on any kind of a stamp, what I want to do is I want to go over and get all of the, get this down to at least 240 grit from the guard on forward. And the reason I do that now as opposed to after is this stuff is, once it's hardened and tempered, it's extremely hard to grind this stuff. It leaves facets, you know, so you'll think you're doing everything perfectly, but it'll leave like a little facet, and those facets are a pain in the butt to get out. So one way to do it is with one of these Scotch-Brite belts. So now I'll go over to the buffer and just start taking this down. Maybe I'll take it up to about 600 grit prior to stamping. So here it is, all stamped and polished and ready to go to the heat treat oven. I've done the heat treatment, tempering, etc. And now it's time to solder the guard in place. To do this, I wrap the blade in a wet cloth to help protect it. And I use a low temperature solder with the idea that you don't have to get this very hot. I usually focus on the guard and right here and right there. You don't have to get it very hot in order to melt the solder and have it go all the way through there. For handle material here, I've decided to go with ivory paper micarta. Reason being that some of the coolest coffin handled Bowies I've seen have had ivory or bone on the handle, and being that this is kind of a modern take on it, I've decided to use a modern material. So I'll cut that down to size, and then I'll show you how I drill the scales so that they line up real well on the handle when it's time to glue everything together. I start by labeling the scale. So this one's going to be on the left side of the knife, inside, and I point to the front. And basically I want to make sure I get this good and lined up, and I clamp it back here. And you want to make sure that you get the scale material as flush up to the guard as you can get it, and that there are no areas where metal is hanging over. Don't ask me how I know that. Now I know that these holes at the front of the guard are 1/8 inch, so I'm going to start by drilling one. Got to adjust this a little bit. Drilling one with an 1/8 inch hole all the way through, starting on the handle side and passing through the micarta. And before I drill my next hole, I always put an 1/8 inch pin through, just to make sure that this next hole will be in the right spot and that this hasn't moved somehow, because the end goal here is to be able to pass your pins all the way through. So now that I'm sure that we haven't moved it all, I'll drill one through here. And now I'll place a pin through there, and I'll continue drilling the rest of the 1/8 inch holes, and then finally the Corby pin holes, and then I'll do the same with the other scale. I do them separate, and then at the end I check to be sure that pins pass through all the way as they're supposed to. And here it is, all mocked up. I know all of the pins fit and that everything comes together nice and tight, and so now we'll just glue it up. Okay, all glued up, and now we're gonna start shaping the handle. And usually what I do is I try to shape the handle this way before I work on shaping the handle this way. And I want to get this micarta all ground back to the tang and real nice and all that. Now when you're doing this, these metal parts like the screws and all that, when you grind over those can get hot really fast, so just go nice and slow when you're doing that. Also, you don't want to burn the micarta, and that can happen if you try to grind this too quickly. You'll get like brown spots, and it really shows up well on these white scales, so you have to go slow. Grind a little bit on one part, it'll heat up, and then grind on some other part for a while. Starting to take shape. Now we need to shape it this way. And this is where we're going to make the real difference in the ergonomics, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. So we're going kind of for this shape. That'll fit your hand a lot better. And the next step is to round off all this way and smooth this out to get a nice smooth contour with no sharp edges and stuff like that. So here we are. I've got a little bit of cleaning to do on here, but what you can see is this nice curve, and what that does is just make it a little bit more ergonomic. You can't, in my opinion, make this a perfectly ergonomic handle because of you're basically bound to this coffin shape, but you can make it at least functional if you you know, 3D the handle a little bit and take out all the sharp edges. Now what's left to do is just do a nice convex edge on here and then buff the blade. We should have a nice finished product. Alright, so that's about the size of it. Turned out really pretty. Gotta do just maybe a little bit more polishing in a couple areas, but that's what a coffin handled Bowie looks like. Let's see if it's sharp. Pretty sharp. So there it is, and thanks a bunch for watching.